Aussie Tech Heads is brought to you by startnewcompany.com.au. Register your company fast, easy, and direct with ASIC. All documentation is provided and held in your account for downloading at any time. If you're an accountant or other professional, you're also able to brand all documents with your company name. Coming soon, ABN, TFN, and trusts. Special discount for ATH listeners. At the cart, use ATH20 for a $20 discount. And athwebhosting.com.au. Servers operate on SSD drives, immediate activation, SSL certificates, Aussie support, domain registration, and easy install of WordPress, Joomla, and Drupal. I'm your host, Jason Oakley, and I'm joined this week by Will Tompkinson.
Hey guys, and welcome back to a semi-special episode of Aussie Tech Heads. Two reasons. One is it's episode 666, so, make that of what you will. And secondly, we have a unusual pairing tonight. We have Joe with us tonight. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks. Will, how you going?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, you're going to be getting called the wrong name all night. I just know this.
That's okay.
It's not a usual pairing. Jason's decided to fly to America, and Glenn's decided he's still homeless or something. I don't know what's going on there. Joe stepped up tonight and has decided to join us.
Well, at least he's out there having a bit of fun.
Yeah, well, it looks like it too. I've been watching his some of his Facebook posts. He's been enjoying himself over there, going to all sorts of tech places and getting tours, and so that should be interesting. So you'll have to excuse my sniffles. I'll try and minimise as much as I can. I am rather unhealthy tonight, but we'll persevere and see how we go. And for anybody who has seizures, there is a seizure warning on Joe's camera. Occasionally it's flickering, so just be wary of that. It's Windows thing. Who knows? It's at this point, who would expect a tech show to actually know about tech? So, so you'll have to bear with us as we blunder through tonight's show, because it's one of those things. You're used to working with somebody, you're used to doing something a certain way, and then you're not working with them, you're working with somebody else, and it's like, help. So, what have you been up to, mate?
Well, over the last week, I've been building a computer for a friend of mine, mechanic. That all worked out good. Been playing around with different type of audio equipment and stuff like that.
As in old school stuff, or
yeah, old school stuff. Yeah. I'm into the old school amps and equalizers and cassette decks. I've got a whole collection of them.
Yep.
Which I'm going to slowly do a video on each and every one of them. Just run through how they work, what they do, what they don't do, with a bit of specs on them and things like that.
I love the old school stuff. I had it was my grandma's. It was a big, I think they used to call them an entertainment cabinet or something. It had a record player at one end, a TV in the middle, and a radio at the other end, and it was all valve and black and white, and unfortunately that got destroyed before I got to it. But I love old tech. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I've got one of those at the inside. It's one of those old PYE
Yep.
stereos, and it's got the inbuilt turntable with the lift up lid.
Yeah.
The black and white TV and the radio in it with shortwave built into it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I would say about 1800 wide by about 600.
And weighs about 12 tons.
Yeah. And and I remember using that as a kid when I was first getting into stereos and stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
there's something about the sound of the old valve systems that no digital system can ever recreate.
Yeah, there's this really warm feeling about it.
Yeah, it could be the radiant glow of all the tubes. I don't know, but something about it. So those are the days. There's actually a couple of guys I watch on YouTube who do restorations on the old stuff, which is really like he gets stuff that's been out in the middle of the desert for 10 years and manages to get it working. Like, it's amazing to watch.
Yeah, I've seen some of those. They're really good.
And then there's Tech Moan, who, just finds the most obscure bits of old hardware that you've ever seen in your life, and, like camcorders that run off audio cassette tapes and all sorts of weird stuff.
Did you see his latest one that he just put out? The one that had the telephone with the video
Yeah,
on
the
it?
video conferencing one.
Yeah, wasn't that a beauty?
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, that was in some respects was ahead of its time, but the irony about that is it's ahead of its time, but it's taken another 20 years to catch up. Like they had the idea, but the technology hasn't been there.
That's right. They needed to use ISDN lines to run video over
Dual
it and stuff
ISDN.
like that.
Had to be dual ISDN lines, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is just like,
And now you got it on your hand. Everything works in your hand now.
yeah, that's it. Like it's well, that's the thing, isn't it? The processing power. Like I was looking at the specs on. I'm looking at getting a set-top box because I'm sick of having a computer doing. Now that I've got the NAS, I don't need the computer doing all that because the NAS handles everything else. I literally just need a set-top box. And I was looking at the specs on some of the set-top box, and the $60 set-top boxes are like octa-core and 32 gig, and you're like, that's just insane, you know. Like, it's just such commonplace technology now that it's nothing.
That's right. I mean, you know, and they come with 3-4 gigs of RAM compared to, you know, the early days ones. Do you remember what was the early day ones set-top boxes you used to buy? They were really big brands, and they were like $800-900.
Oh, there was a few of them. There's Roku was a big one, and yeah, there was a few of them. Even the Telstra hub rip-off. The Telstra set-top box was a rip-off of, I can't think now, something.
No, there was this other one. I can't think of it
Yeah,
now. It would have been the size of a mini VCR.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. I just can't think of the brand of it. Wasn't real popular here, but it was huge in the States. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, and if they were literally just powerful enough to, well, even the early Austar and Foxtel boxes, they were just powerful enough to decode the signal and turn it into video. That's like, that was the maximum thing they could do, and they're this big to do it, you know. You know, and now to do that same stuff is just.
Yeah,
you know,
have you come across any that's got a TV antenna outlet on them?
Well, because of the digital TV now, basically anything, most of them have a USB port, and if they're running Android, there's digital TV apps on the Android, so you can plug a digital TV tuner into them and run them that way.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Probably run one of those, what do they call those, HD run devices?
Any of those sort of things. But it really depends on what you want to do, because most of them, yeah, okay, they've got, well, the one I was looking at today was $89. It was 8 gig of RAM and 64 gig of ROM, which I guess ROM's the wrong word now because it's not read-only memory, but anyway, storage. But it, you could put a external hard, like it supported USB external hard drive, so you could have up to a 3 terabyte external hard drive on it. But it wasn't really designed as a recording thing. It's just literally for watching YouTube and watching video streams and stuff. So I don't really understand. You can use it for media playback, I suppose, but if it's on your network, then you're going to have access to your computer, which is going to have that on anyway. So I kind of don't understand where that fit in. It seemed like a double redundant. I mean, it's a marketing point, a selling point, I get that, but it sort of just doesn't seem like something that would be useful. I can't think of a situation that you would do that. You know?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I would say probably a scenario would be when you would say you were going on a holiday and you wanted to bring your box with you, and you wanted to bring a whole heap of movies for the kids to watch.
Yeah, but you can have a tablet, or you know,
you can do stuff like that with it, I guess.
You'd have a tablet or something now, though. You know, it's like,
yeah, true. You know, yeah, it's true.
It's filling a market that doesn't really seem to exist. I don't know, it's bizarre. But there's a lot of I've got an external hard drive cradle sitting over there that has built-in media player. Like if you've got audio and video files, it's got HDMI direct output on the external hard drive. So it plays the media files directly off the external hard drive and plays them directly to a TV anyway.
Yeah, I've seen those ones too.
So,
yeah, I've got a box here, and it's a fairly old box now, and it's got both video HDMI in and HDMI out.
Yep.
Right now, although at the time I bought it, I must have paid what was it, a couple $100 for it, $250, something like that. And what I found is that although it works good and all that, but now the firmware, they don't update anymore, right? So I've got a 2-3-year-old box, which is probably just as good as any device today, bar the RAM, right?
Yeah.
But you just don't really get a chance to use it because they haven't updated any of the firmware. It's still running Still running Android. What is it? 4 point something or other.
Yeah, and that's the problem. They get to a certain point and you can't upgrade them because a lot of that hardware is not usable in the new software. So you're either stuck with what you can do. You could always bootstrap it. You could put Clockwork Orange or put something on it that's not a legit Android, but you usually run into hardware limitations, which is why they sort of get to that point and won't go any further.
Yeah. Well, what I do with it is I run my my Chromecast through it.
Oh yeah.
Right, so I can record anything off the Chromecast because it'll record it. Whatever HDMI goes in,
yep,
you can record your Chromecast movie or whatever it is that you're playing. I use things like VCRs, HDMI outputs, VCRs straight into this.
Yep.
It'll play it and you can record it. So it's got its things. It's just I would have preferred it would have been updated so that I could update the software and run other things with it.
Yeah, but I mean, having said that, for the sake of $60 or $80, whatever they are now, it's not really worth persevering with an old piece of hardware either to do that sort of thing, because a new one that's 10 times more powerful is, so cheap.
That's right.
So,
yeah, that's true too.
It's sort of, there's that. I mean, with old tech, yeah, it's always worth playing with and having fun with and getting it to do stuff it's not supposed to do. But that's because it's old in a different way. Like it's old to the point where it's superseded so far that most people don't even know about it. Like a lot of people don't even know what a CD is these days, let alone a VCR or a tape. So real old tech is great, but sort of semi-modernish Chinese throwaway tech, it's literally that. Like it's not that old that it's worth anything, and it's not really modern enough that it's worth keeping. It's kind of in that dead zone in the middle. I've got a cupboard full of it over there that I move around occasionally and look at it and go, and you just chuck it back in the cupboard because you sort of.
Well, that's right, yeah. But I wouldn't be tossing them out though.
No,
all that old tech is starting to come up in value now.
Like there's an old Ace EPC,
Yeah, I've got one of those sitting somewhere.
that I'm trying to get Android to run on, and for whatever reason, it'll boot off a USB if the USB's got any version of Windows on it, but as soon as I put a version of Linux on a USB, it won't boot. So I don't know.
Have you tried installing Chrome?
Yep. I've tried.
Does it install Chrome?
No, it literally, if I have a thumb drive with any form of Linux on it, it literally won't boot. It just sits there at the pick
Yeah,
of
but if you try installing Chrome on
Chromium. Or Chrome, the browser.
Chrome OS.
Yeah, Chromium, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, same thing. It's a version of Linux.
Oh, really?
Yep. Android, Chromium, anything that's not Windows. Just literally, Windows boots perfectly and installs perfectly off a thumb drive. Anything else just does not want to know about it.
I wonder why that is, though.
But it's not even that it won't install. It won't pick up the thumb drive to install it. It won't see the thumb drive. It's bizarre. I don't know. I've got to spend a bit more time with it and see what's going on. But
that's got a has that got a memory card slot?
Yeah,
it does. Maybe try and run it off the memory card slot.
It doesn't work. This thing got submerged a few years ago, and it's been in my dead hardware pile for about 3 or 4 years. And the other day, I just randomly plugged it in, and it came back up. But the Wi-Fi doesn't work. The SD slot doesn't work. The battery doesn't work. So, but it's
the one I got still a fully functioning one. I actually use it every now and then.
Oh, it was until it got submerged.
Yeah.
the water. They don't like being operating when they go underwater.
Yeah, right, obviously.
I'm surprised it came back up, to be honest.
But, some people do them up, They put more RAM in them. They put SSDs in them.
Yeah. This actually came with, I think it's got 2 gig of RAM, which the Maxis board supports, and it's got a 64 gig SSD in it. That's actually what it came with. It's one of the later, it's the last of the single core Atoms before they switched to dual cores.
Now, I think the one I got is a bit more powerful. Now, I think my one's got a quad core and it's got 4 gigs of RAM in it, so it's still fairly okay.
Yeah. I mean, once again, if you use them for their purpose, if you're using it for web browsing and writing documents and stuff, they're perfectly fine. So.
And you mentioned Orange. Was that some sort of other operating system? I've not heard of that one.
Clockwork Orange, that's a mod. It's Android, but it's rooted so that you can install it on devices that's not supposed to have it.
See if I can do a Google search for that. What do you call it?
I think it's Clockwork Orange. It's been a while since I've used it. I can't. Let me have a quick look here. See if I can find it quickly. This is orange. Yeah, there's a few branches of it now. Looks like that's not around, but there's a few branches on that. But yeah, basically you can basically root any Android device and change the software that's on it. So
Okay.
But I haven't had a device I've had to do that for quite a while. I used to do it all the time on the older devices. They'd come with so many skins and overlays that it'd slow them down. So you'd put a vanilla Android on it by rooting it and doing all that stuff. But the phones that are so powerful now, you just don't need to do that.
That's right. You don't. Yeah. I don't even root my phones anymore. I used to do the apples and jailbreak them and all sorts of things, but you don't bother with that stuff anymore.
Not really. Not unless you're trying to, unless you have a specific reason to do it. It's not something you really do anymore. It was big a couple of years ago. It was a massive thing to do, and everybody was doing it. But yeah, it's a. Anyway, so I should get on with the stories. Do you have a story, sir?
I do. I was looking today, and I came across this story about Microsoft's Android phone. They call it the Surface Duo, and apparently the Surface Duo, it's a flip. It flips and it folds, and it occasionally locks up and crashes as well. Apparently,
Well, it wouldn't be a Microsoft product if it didn't.
yeah. So it's Microsoft. Apparently, it says here that Microsoft has another Android self-branded phone, the Surface Duo, which was announced a year ago. Before it planned to release to the market, it was released. It was seen in the wild at the moment. A Twitter user by the name of Israel Rodriguez spotted a person with a prototype device on a Vancouver subway, and he did a spy video of it, and he put it up on YouTube. So I've got the link here, which you can then check out in the show notes if anyone wants to see it, or you can just search for Israel Rodriguez in YouTube, and it shows you a good portion of the video. It shows the phone being used, and you see it slowing down and becomes unresponsive at times. Then you'll see that about a minute into the video, you'll see that it locks up and when it uses some sort of an app. So besides the device locking up and crashing, you get to see how the phone looks like. It folds. It's basically like your standard, Apple phone or your Samsung phone, whatever. That's the one. Yeah, you got it.
Yep.
And then it folds up and you can fold it into single screen. It folds into two screens. It looks like a book type setup. When you're all done, you just close it up. The two screens fold together and put it away. And it's on the outside. It's just looks like it appears to be a metal exterior. The only information that they have on this particular phone is that it's 5.6 inches in display. So they say that it's going to be released around about, the holidays of 2020.
Yeah, which holidays?
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah. I mean, it's typical of Microsoft, though. They
probably yeah. Well, I'm not sure if it's these holidays or Christmas holidays. I'd say Christmas holidays.
By the time they release it, it'll be outdated. I mean, it's this thing's been in development for way over 12 months now, and it's not. It's a true split screen. Like, it's not a foldable screen or anything. It's actually two separate screens, which I have to admit isn't necessarily a bad thing in some regards. It tends to be more resilient, but you've still got ribbon cables, you've still got flex cables, you've still got all this stuff happening inside. I really think we're still several years off having a reliable foldable phone.
Well, that's true, but have you seen the new Samsung Fold phone?
I've seen some media tests on it. I haven't actually.
Yeah, apparently some guys have been looking at it, and even the Motorola Razr phone, they sort of like fold in the middle like the old Motorola Razr does.
Yeah.
But the Samsung one, apparently where it folds, where the hinge is in the center, you can feel under the finger when you're touching the screen that there's a little bit of an indentation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not too keen on that sort of thing. So,
More complexity you add, the more far points you add. It's just that simple. Like, like if you, I mean, we're only getting to the point now where you can have a phone for 2 or 3 years without destroying the case and the screen, and you know what I mean. Like, even something simple like the charge ports. Once a phone hits 2 or 3 years old, generally the charge ports stop failing just because they fill up with crap, and you've tried to put the USB cable in the wrong way 47,000 times, and there's just a standard phone. There's only we've had mobile phones very, very commonplace for over 20 years, and they're only getting to the point now where they're becoming. Well, I guess the old ones were bulletproof, but once we hit the digital era, instead of the analog phones, it's only getting to the point now where they're becoming reasonable phones, decent reception, good call quality, actually being a phone rather than just a device.
Have you ever heard of the brand Cubot? Cubot?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't know much about
Yeah.
it, but I have.
Well, I've got one. I've got this one here. It's called the Cubot. It's called the Cubot Power.
Yeah.
And this is a great phone. I think I only paid no more than $300 for this phone.
Yeah.
All right. It's got 6 gigs of RAM, 128 gigabyte storage. It's got the quad-core processor. I can't remember now what. So I think it's 2.2 or 2.3 quad-core processor. The only thing, it's got a 6,000 milliamp battery. So the battery in this thing lasts easy 2 days, no problems. The only thing I don't like about this phone is the camera. It says it's got a 16 megapixel Sony camera in it, and it probably has. Now, I don't know whether it's software or what, but it doesn't give me crisp, clear photos.
It's probably, you can have a high megapixel, but if you've got a low, small image sensor, it's pointless. It's doing software rendering to make the difference up.
Yeah, but even so, I bought it under the understanding that this phone had the Samsung 16 megapixel camera that they use in their phones. So I don't know, maybe they put a dud in, or it was a fake, or who knows what.
Could be a bad lens. There's also a program you can use to get more out of your phone. If you use, see if I can quickly find it. I think it's called.
Is that the Open Camera?
Open Camera? Yeah, Open Camera.
I've used that. It doesn't do much difference at all. The Open Camera does give you more features and more things that you can adjust and play with.
Yeah.
But as far as the quality of the camera, yeah, look, it's nor here nor there.
I mean, it's possible. It's just the cameras. There's more than just the camera that makes a camera. There's the communications between the camera and the board. There's the lens quality. There's the image sensor quality of the camera. There's the lens design. There's the actual software that's driving. There's so many steps in that process.
I agree with you 100%. And I think in this case, it could be something to do with the software that's running the camera.
Because I've got I don't know where it is. It's one of the cheap $60 candy bar phones I bought for work. It's supposed to have an 8 megapixel camera. This is an old Nokia E63. This is a 2 megapixel camera, and the camera quality in this far surpasses that I think one that I bought that's only a couple of years old. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a cheap phone. I think I paid somewhere between $250 and $300. I can't quite remember. It's already been over a year that I've had it.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I can fault it on. It doesn't slow down, doesn't freeze. It doesn't do anything wrong other than the fact that the camera I don't feel is as sharp as it should be.
And see, I mean, the Chinese manufacturers are killing it because you've got Xiaomi, which I'm a big fan of because I talk about them all the time. But you've got the Xiaomi M8 Pro, which is a 12-month-old phone now, but it's does 3G and 4G, all that, 6.2 inch screen, 128 gig ROM, 64 gig, 8 gig RAM, 128 gig ROM. It's got 12 megapixel 4-axis optical stabilized optical zoom. 12 by optical zoom, all that sort of stuff. Camera, 20 megapixel front camera, which is interesting. Does 4K, 30 frame a second video, and it's a $300 phone. You know,
Yeah,
like
so that's a good price for that that sort of phone.
I think it's from memory. It doesn't say here, but I think it's a octa-core. So it's an 8-core. Oh, here we go down here. No, it doesn't say that. But yeah, if it's an 8-core processor, it's, you know, like for what they are, they're, you know, for $300, what more do you want? You know.
That's right. When the battery dies, just go and get yourself another one.
Well, the batteries are replaceable anyway, but they're as you say, they're a 6 amp hour battery. You know, so they last 2 or 3 days anyway. You know, so it's pretty insane what you can pick up, what the Chinese are doing these days. You know, the new Samsung, the 10 or whatever it is, the new one's coming out.
It's like the S20.
No, not quite that one, but like the big, was it the one that's like come out last year? Whatever it was, but it's like a $1,200 or $1,400 phone, you know, and it realistically isn't any better or worse than that.
Oh, you mean the S11 or the S12?
Something like that,
yeah.
Because my brother-in-law just bought one, and I mean, I've got a Note 4, you know, and there's nothing that my phone does that his does, you know, other than his being maybe slightly higher, but you can't on fixed without external storage. You can't record 4K video anyway because you can only record 12 minutes of it, and your storage is full. You know, so
yeah, I think I was reading somewhere today it was 600 megabytes a minute or something. Or
well, that's minimum. Yeah, it can go up from there. 4K video can be, you know, 6,000. It can be, you know, 6,000 kilobits a minute. You know, it's like streaming, even in 720k. You know, I'm streaming out at 6 kilobits a second, and that's only at 720. You know, so.
Yeah, I guess the big thing with phones these days, it's either the camera, make sure it's got at least minimum 4 gigs of RAM, your processor dual core, try and get something that's above 2000 megahertz, and then you should be fine for the couple of years anyway.
I mean, it really depends on what you're using it for too. You know, like my mother-in-law literally uses hers for Facebook and making phone calls. So I specifically got her an older phone that has a larger battery. You know, so for that exact reason, because she just doesn't do that much with it. It doesn't need to be super powerful, but the longer it lasts, the easier it is for her without having to plug it in. So, you know.
Yeah. The only other drawback I've got with this particular phone, and I'm not sure if it's the same with the Xiaomi's, is it's just that it has had no firmware updates since I've had it. You know, I think I got a firmware update when I first bought it. And then since then, it had no other firmware updates. And I've kept looking every couple of months. I've been checking on the site. And although your Google stuff and all your apps and everything update, the actual firmware of the phone doesn't. So I'm a bit pissed off about that.
Not that unusual. I know when the Hoppos or whatever it is, I know they got the same sort of thing. Like when they first came out, they didn't have. But Xiaomi was the same when they were a smaller company. They released a phone, they didn't touch it, and they released a new phone, they didn't touch it. You know, it was just one of those things. I remember HTC back in the day. I had one of the early HTCs, and I had that for 2 years, and just as I was about to trade it in, I got an update. You know, so updates aren't super critical if your phone's working fine. You don't necessarily need to update it. There's not necessarily a reason to update, you know.
That's true. I mean, and I'm only hoping for the update so that maybe there's something that they can fix with the camera. The other thing with it is this one here. There's a slight fault when you take a screenshot. If you take a second screenshot a minute or so later, you can see this. You can still see the superimposed up underneath. It doesn't take a clear screenshot.
Yeah, it sounds like a bit of a software issue.
So that's the other little thing that's wrong with it. So apart from those things, I'm quite happy with it.
I mean, they might have rushed, like in development, they might have got 99% completed, and then at the last minute had to change a chip on the board somewhere and didn't think about it properly. You know, like those smaller manufacturers, that sort of stuff happens too. They're under supply issues or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, you know, we'll just change that. No one will know.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, how many of those little cube spy cameras that are 1080p. It's, you know, like, yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
So, Google Nest. This is relatively new. It hasn't been out that long. And a lot of people, you know, I still use the Google Home stuff, but the Nest is the newer, I guess, integration into this. They're forcing users into two-factor authentication. Users of Google Nest products will soon be forced into using two-factor authentication to access their devices. Google said starting in spring, autumn, not for those not based in the Northern Hemisphere, all Nest users have not enrolled in the 2FA option or migrated to a Google account will be required to take extra step by verifying their identity via email. When a new login to your account is initiated, you'll receive an email from an account with a 6-digit PIN. Blah, blah, blah. The code will be used to make sure it's trying to log in without you won't be able to do it. Now, this is all fine and dandy, and I've said this before about 2FA. It's great in theory. The biggest problem with 2FA is when it goes wrong, it goes horribly wrong. What's the stupid button? Sorry, I'm trying to do 3 things at once. So if, for example, like, you know, for whatever reason you don't have access to, or the device resets, does a factory reset, which can happen sometimes on an update, or it can just happen. I've had a couple of my minis just randomly go, I don't know who you are anymore. You've had to do a full reset on them. And it's all fine and dandy when everything's working perfectly fine, but then all of a sudden, you know, you've given your mother a Nest to teach you how to cook in the kitchen or whatever you've done, and it's hooked up to your account, and then it doesn't work, and then she can't do anything, and then you can't do anything because you can't explain to her how she's got to enter the digits, so you've got to, you know. So having 2FA as an option is good, but forcing people to use 2FA is not necessarily a good thing.
Does it give you any idea on indication on like how often would you need to use the TFA?
Technically, it would be from a new location. Wow, my camera's freaking out tonight. It would be from a new location, so that's the other thing that can happen. If you're on a ISP who does the rolling IP changes, which a lot of them do because they rent IP addresses rather than owning IP addresses, so they just get the next available block. So when you log off, and while you're logged on with your router, it's fine, but if your router resets or your internet goes down and comes back up, you'll get a different IP address. Quite often, that's enough to trigger a 2FA. If you took it from it could even be, depending on how they determine it's a new logon. So it could even be something as simple as you've upgraded your router. It could be you've changed it from, like in my case, I've got a router here, and at the other end of the house, everything runs off the Wi-Fi extender. But technically, it sees that as a different network, which can be enough to trigger it into thinking it's completely separate network, therefore it's a new login. It could be an update. It could be the thing just.
Does it also do it when it connects up other devices as well? Like if you want to connect a lamp to
every
it
time,
or a light?
No, because that's internal. That's happening on the internal side of it. It's same as your phone. Like once you've unlocked your phone, you can basically do anything internally on the phone. You know, but as soon as it's the same sort of thing with this. Like it will only affect having basically seen it as a new login or a change of location. And it depends how sensitive the change of location is. Like I have an issue quite often with Google because I log in at work and I log in at home. Now, work at home is actually not that far away, but because we're on a business plan at work, our internet's actually hosted up at the Sunshine Coast, which is, you know, a 3 or 4 hour drive away from where we are, whereas my home one is hosted just down the road. So it sees this, you know, 300k gap. And if I have 2FA on, I literally, because I leave my computer on at home and it's always logged in, and it'll try to re-log in if something happens. So if I've got 2FA on, I literally have to, like, every half an hour I'm entering a new code because it thinks I'm at a new location. You know? So I've actually turned, you know, login notification off because it was literally happening every 10 or 15 minutes. And it's just driving you batty. But it would be the same sort of thing. Like if you've got, you know, as I said, you've got 2 different networks, could do it. Switching networks, you know, there's a few reasons it'll trigger. Now, if you've got something set up like a lot of people are, they're going towards home automation and stuff like that now. 2FA is kind of irrelevant anyway, because if you've got that sort of setup, you're going to have your internal network separate from your external network anyway. So all your devices are going to be behind, which you'll talk about later, but a router or something like that, which would probably have Tomato or have another custom firmware on it, would allow you to specifically say, this device is an internal device, it's going to run through a VPN and it's going to run through a firewall before you can access it remotely, you know. So if you're getting to that level of expertise to do that, you don't need 2FA. Like, that's what I'm saying. Having it for the average user is not going to be a problem. Like, that's fine. But don't force people to use it. Give people the option. Don't say you have to use this because we think you need it. You say, well, look, we recommend you use this, and unless you really know what you're doing, you probably should. You know, so
is there any indication that maybe for security features, like if someone, you know, I mean, who's going to want to knock off a a device from your home and then start using it? You know, I guess, is there any like security reason for it?
That's what I can't understand. The only thing it would be is if you would have access to, I know with the minis and that, I can take a mini to a mate's place without doing anything and plug it in, and I can still access, because it's logged into my Google account, I can get it to read my emails, I can get it to go through my Spotify. Like, there is a certain amount of things you can do. And with a Nest, it'd be more so because a Nest is a display. So you could actually literally like have access to people's emails and all that sort of stuff. So in that regard, yes, if somebody flogs it, they could, without 2FA, they could take it home and access your information. So from that point of view, yes, it's definitely something that would be good. But once again, an experienced user is not going to use their daily email address. They're going to have an internal email address, Fred's home automation account at gmail.com or something is going to be their one that they use for all their stuff. So it's kind of going to be irrelevant anyway.
That's right, yeah. I know what you mean.
So, as I said, look, it's like, it's the whole thing with having firewalls and having antiviruses and having Windows updates and stuff like that. It's like, it's great for the majority of people. It's perfectly fine. But don't force me to update my Windows every week, because I don't need it to. I don't need any more updates. The way the system is functioning now is exactly the way I want it to function. And with their last track record of their last couple of releases they've done, I think I'd prefer it if they didn't update. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, anyway. You have another story?
Yeah, I've got a couple here. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll go with this one. Just a quick note to anyone who's listening that if you're running Tomato firmware on your routers, there is a botnet out there called Mushstick, and it targets routers that are running the Tomato firmware. Apparently, what it does is it attacks and exploits the login credentials of your router, and if you set everything to default, for example, your username and your password is still your default admin, then what it ends up doing is that they end up logging into your router. They turn on the remote administration within the router, and then from there they then exploit the router by allowing it to act as a part of a botnet, and it's all part of the Mushstick botnet. So this has been found out by researchers from Palo Alto Networks that said that they've done some tests and they've found that the Tomato firmware running in particular with the Broadcom chips. So that's something that you should look out for. And
I mean, how often do we see this? Look, was it last year? It was all the home security devices, all the Swan stuff that had the same thing. People didn't change the default login. If you leave something exposed, and it's not becoming as big of an issue as it has, because most things now randomize. At the very least, they randomize the password, and most routers, particularly, they've got it written on the back. But if you leave something that's a mass-produced, like Tomato is generally an upgrade to a router. Most routers don't come with it. It's something you put on. So it's up to you to change the username and password. It's like installing Linux. Linux is incredibly secure, but if you leave root with no password, which a lot of people do, it's not an incredibly secure operating system. You know, it's only as secure as you allow it to be.
That's right. Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, if you're a user of Tomato firmware and you just go in there and just change the username and password, and the experts are suggesting that even if it's password protected even if it's been changed, make a strong password as well, rather than just making a weak password. Don't make just any sort of password. Make it a strong one.
yeah.
Because at least that way it's harder for them to get in.
That's right. I mean, there are plenty of utilities out there for passwords. You can either use a program like LastPass to manage your stuff. I'm lazy. I use Chrome to manage my passwords, which in itself is a security flaw, but I don't care. But I noticed even Chrome now is when you sign up to a site, it actually will auto-generate a password for you if you want it to as well. So even most of the browsers now, that's a built-in feature, at least with as far as secure passwords go.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that Chrome actually offered a password.
I only noticed
I've been using Chrome for a while, and sure, I use the remember password on it, but I wasn't aware that it generated.
No, it's not something that I'd sort of taken any notice of. It was only the other day.
Is it a plugin that you need to get or something?
It's just now when you. I'm just trying to find a website I haven't signed up to. It's when you go to a new sign up. It, from what I can tell, basically just goes, oh, you want to have a username and password. I'll choose your username, and then once you choose your username, it goes, oh, I can make up a password for you, and it gives you 12-digit random password, which I thought was pretty cool. So it's only it doesn't. I'd very rarely go to a website that I'm not signed up to that I'm going to sign up to, so it's not something I've really noticed. But yeah, I noticed it a couple of days ago. So I don't know if it's just a new thing or if it's just something I haven't noticed for ages.
Yeah, I started using LastPass and stuff like that, and I don't know whether it was something that I was doing wrong or it was just how it is. But what I found when it came to using, because I think LastPass has also got the option to protect your apps as well in your phone.
Yeah,
so
something like that.
What was happening was you had to keep on inserting the original master password.
Yeah.
And I found that very annoying. And I said, oh, bugger that, I'm not using this anymore.
Yeah, I think you can disable that.
Yeah, but then it's not secure.
No, you can disable it so that if the app's been open, you don't have to do it. So like if you're using the app and you're doing stuff, while ever the app's open, it doesn't ask you for that. But if you close the app and then you go to reopen it, it will.
Yeah, I think also if you lock the phone or if you reboot the phone, it still comes up as well.
Yeah. But
so I found that annoying, so I didn't bother with it anymore.
I don't know why. If your phone's locked, I don't know why you would worry about locking each individual application. That doesn't make
sense. It wasn't locking it. It's just that if you close an app down and then you wanted to reopen it, normally, the app's got a password that to log in, and so it just normally logs you in. But what I was finding was happening was that rather than just logging in, it was kept asking me every now and then to put the master password in, and I found that very annoying.
Okay. Yeah, it's all part of the security thing. I don't know. I haven't used it for a long time. I used to use it, but then I just got lazy and discovered Chrome does everything for me. I just deal with that now.
Yeah.
My passwords are so secure that they're stored on a plain text file document. So it's not like it's hard to, you can, if someone wants my identity, they're welcome to it. They can have all the debt that goes with it. That's fine. Doesn't worry me in the slightest. What are they going to do,
They take over your identity.
And it doesn't do me any good.
Cause all sorts of grief.
Like what? What's the worst thing can happen? Okay, if you're a celebrity or you're a high-profile person, yes, absolutely, damage can be caused. If you're Joe Blow, you've got a crap credit rating, nobody wants to touch you anyway, and you haven't got any influence over anything, you can't do anything.
Well, what if they take over your passwords, they get into your passwords, and then they get access to your bank accounts, they get access to your online emails and other accounts that you have. They go in and they change passwords, they change logins, and they lock you out of everything. Then what?
I got no money in my bank accounts anyway. It doesn't worry me.
But you get my drift, don't you?
That's what I'm saying. If you've got something worth protecting, yes.
Yeah.
But the flip side to that, if you've got something worth protecting, you're the people they're going to go after. The hackers don't just randomly hack Joe Blow who's not worth anything. They don't. It's just not something that happens.
That's right. Yeah. They know. Yeah.
You know, you have to have some worth to them to make it worth their time and effort to do that. Even if it's as much as getting a fake ID, there's no point giving somebody a fake ID if somebody who doesn't have anything, because you can't do anything with that fake ID.
Yeah, and also, just as it's come to mind now, I just want to let the listeners know that just be careful with your text messages. I've been getting this spam text message over the last few days, and it was from Australia Post.
Yep.
And what it said was that your package is not going to be delivered unless you pay a $2 fee.
Yeah.
Now, I have been expecting a package to come, and it hadn't arrived yet, and it's been like a week or two overdue, and I'm thinking, maybe the sender didn't pay enough money and I have to pay. Rather than click on it and say, okay, I'll pay the $2, send me the package, I actually went down to the post office and I said to them, look, this is the number, blah, 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 blah. Oh, no, that's a spam. Don't go clicking on it and paying $2. If at any time the sender doesn't pay the correct postage fee, we will still receive the item, and then we will mail it to you or phone you, and we will ask you to come in and get it, and then you can pay us. But at no time, don't go pay anything online. They're just going to take your credit card details. So just be aware of that little scam.
Yeah, and there's another one. If you want to find them too, you can go to the Australia Post website. If you go to the AusPost.com.au, and then you go in there and search for scams. It'll actually bring up their website, and it's got a list of all the scams that people are doing. And I've actually got this one, which is the urgent message: parcel cannot be shipped to the distribution centre because of unverified address.
Yeah, that's the one I got. Yeah.
Yeah. So what that one does is when you go in, and you go into there, it gets you to enter your name and address and contact number into the form. And then it says, what hours are you most likely at home? So the most people are going to put, after 5 and before 8 or whatever. So they know that during the day no one's at home, so they'll come and rob your house. It's effectively what that's for.
Oh, really? Okay. No, I didn't go in that far. So it's good that you brought that up. I wasn't aware of that.
But yeah, you can go there and check out all the scams. There's been a couple of other ones happening this year. There's another one that's saying waiting to be delivered, click here. And what it does is it works on parcels where you have a tracking number, and they get you to enter the tracking number. So then they get a record of your tracking number. Then they go in and they use the tracking number. And once you've got that, you can change the times and dates and destinations quite often. You can say, if no one's home, please leave in the letterbox or whatever. And what they'll do is they wait for the post to come and do that, and then once they drop it off the letterbox, I'll just walk up and take it out. So yeah, it's just be anything that's. It's the same with when you get calls from centres. It's usually very easy to tell because when you pick up the phone to say hello, there's usually a 4 or 5 second delay before they answer. There's 2 reasons for that. One is they're usually on a VPN, so they're from overseas somewhere, and there's just lag in the system. The other reason is quite often they do a bulk dial, so they'll dial 100 numbers at once, and then they'll answer them in order that the people have answered the phone. They don't generally expect people to answer the phone very quickly, so if you happen to answer within a ring or two, quite often there's a delay while they scramble for somebody to take the call. So generally, if there's a 1 or 2 second delay when you say hello and you don't hear anything, just hang up, and then on Android phones at least, you can go in. You can go into your call history of the numbers you've seen, and then you click on the number. It's a bit hard to do backwards. So you click on the number, and then there's the 3. Where's my camera? There's up the top. There's the dots. You go into details, and then up the top there's the 3 dots next to your share up there. You click on that, and then you can say block number. If you click on that, it'll come up and say block number, and you can block that number, and so they can't call back from that number again. So that's always good when they're smart enough to ring with an actual phone number.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. That.
Okay, so quickly another story. Speaking of browsers and whatever. Microsoft Firefox has just released their new update, which does a few things. They've actually updated about the same time as Thunderbird this time, but it does a few things. It mainly fixes some memory safety bugs that were in there, which we're not talking like memory leaks and stuff like that. We're actually talking about, I guess they used to be called TSRs, Terminate and Stay Resident, the equivalent of that in a browser, which basically leaves your browser open to remote attacks by shutting certain parts of a website down and just leaving that like a portal that they can get in through. So they've fixed 72 vulnerabilities and patches were added to this one. So it's been a pretty heavy update. And I'm actually quite a fan of Firefox. I use it a lot. And with Thunderbird, especially now, given that they the last Thunderbird update, wow, that broke a lot of stuff. They really made a hash of it. They fixed it and re-released it very quickly, but in the 6 or 8 hours where the previous update was out there, it was made a hash of it. None of the like if you had customized addresses and with custom colors and stuff like that, and all your folders were customized. All that customization went away. All the default fonts were applied. Like, it was horrible there for a while, trying to scroll through.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
25 different email addresses and 400 folders, and they all looked exactly the same.
So you're using the Thunderbird system, are you?
Thunderbird. I've always used Thunderbird. I've used Thunderbird for since like 97, 98. Thunderbird's always been, and up until several years ago, Firefox was my default browser because I'm made by the same company. And yeah, I basically just use them. It's only been recently, in the last few years, I've switched over to Chrome. And the main reason I did that is because it integrates with Google, whereas Thunderbird, Firefox, you've got to have a Firefox account, which is no big deal. It still all works perfectly fine. It's just one extra account you've got to have. And that's literally the only reason I don't use it anymore. I use it at work. I've got 4 browsers I use at work. So I use standard Chrome, I use Canary, I use Opera, and I use Firefox. And all of those have separate accounts for work. So one's mine, one's one of our branches, one's another one's branch, and one's another one. So I literally have 4 separate, instead of having to log in and log out all the time, and I literally have 4 separate browsers, 4 separate accounts, 4 separate databases, basically. So the cool part about Thunderbird is it integrates all those into one thing. So I've got one Thunderbird with 25 email addresses or something integrated into it.
That's heaps.
And
Keeps
each one of those has got a couple of dozen subfolders, and then under those subfolders there's subfolders, you know. And Thunderbird integrates really, really well. Like, it loves it. Like, the more you throw at it and the harder you make it work, the better it performs. And yeah, so I'm quite a fan of it. I quite like using it. And it still does all this. It does everything Outlook does, except it's free. It's faster. It's lighter weight. And backing up and restoring it is so much easier. And it's just reliable. I don't think I've ever had a Thunderbird crash in however long I've been using it, 25 years or 20 years or whatever it is.
But Thunderbird doesn't have a phone app, does it?
Because
I remember looking into it last year at some point, and I looked at it and I started using Thunderbird, but then when I was not on the computer, I would have had to log in via a standard web page rather than using an app, and
which is not great when you got a heap of emails.
Yeah, so I had to go back to Google and start using that, and just added the addresses in there because it just works so much better, and the interface was just so much nicer to use.
I don't know, because I generally try and leave my work at work, so I've never actually looked at it.
Yeah. I think the thing with that is that it doesn't have a proper app for it, and I'm not sure whether they're developing one now or not. But that's one of the bad things about it.
Yeah,
it is a good software for email. It is. You're right.
I know that there's a Thunderbird add-on for Firefox. Whether or not that translates across into the mobile version, I don't know, because there's a mobile version of Firefox.
Yeah. The other way to get around it, and some people use it. I used it for a short period of time, and I still do use it for some email addresses, and it's called Blue Mail.
Yeah.
That normally works pretty good too.
I actually just I quite often use remote access software and log into my system remotely because there's often several things I need to do. If I need to do something, it's usually not one thing, it's usually several things. So I'll just log in remotely, do it that way and be done with it. I've never specifically, like we use a lot of online apps, which I guess probably do have mobile apps, but because I need to do, for some of our workflow, I need to literally use 4 separate, what would be apps, which I guess on the computer is easy because you can just switch between them. Whereas if I was doing it on the phone, it would actually be quite a painful operation to open that one, input the information, close it so that it updates, so that it sends it to the other app so I can open that, then close that so it updates and pushes information to the other app. You know what I mean? So sometimes I think it's easier just to remote in and be done with it. Even on a small screen these days with the way remote access is set up, it's perfectly manageable to manage a 4 display PC on a small screen. So, you got anything else there?
Okay, well, I've got this a gadget of the week, which is an interesting one here. And would you ever use a smart device on your Weber barbecue? Like, would you ever thought that they would have had a smart device for your Weber barbecue?
The only one I know about is there's a temperature probe that tells you when your meat's cooked. That's the only thing I'm aware of.
Yeah. Well, this one here's an update from that. They call it the Smart Grilling Hub. And what it does, it connects to the ports of the wires, which are like thermometers on them.
Yep.
And they monitor the temperature of the meat or anything else that you're cooking on the barbie, actually. So it comes with 4 probes, and you can monitor each one individually. Then what it does is it alerts you with some sort of notification when the meat reaches proper temperature. It also gives you the option to alert you whether you want to need to flip the food over. So if you're cooking a steak and you want to flip it over. So yeah, that's the gadget of the week. I would say it's probably a good little device. It's what, it's $129.99 US dollars.
Yeah,
and it's coming out
$200.
Yeah, 129. Yeah, 99. So it's coming out early 2020, they reckon, and they reckon later on in the year they're going to support Alexa, so you can speak to Alexa and tell it to see how long before the barbie is ready. Yeah, I reckon that's a good little device.
Yeah, well, I know that there's a guy I get a magazine called DIYODE, and it's all projects, and most of it's Arduino based. Most of the stuff on there you can do with Arduinos. And there's a guy on there who's making an all-in-one grill. Like, it literally, you on the app tell it what you're cooking, and it literally cooks it. Like, once you've put everything onto the grill plate, you put another one on top of it. You sandwich everything in there, and then it will literally time, like, it will weigh, like, it even weighs, like, the plates, because it's on like a rotisserie thing. It knows exactly how much weight there is. They can weigh it every time you add a piece of steak, so it knows how heavy everything is.
That's really cool.
It'll actually flip it when it's due to be flipped. It'll turn the heat up and down depending on what it needs to do. Like, it literally does like all this stuff. It's all made with an Arduino. It's all DIY stuff. It's very, very simple, actually. You look at the way it's made, and it's quite simple. But yeah, it literally does everything for you. So you go there, you put the meat on the barbecue, you turn around, have a couple of beers, you come back, and they're all done. You put them on the plate, you go, look what I cooked.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Yeah.
I tell you what, the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi and, you know, all that sort of... Speaking of Raspberry Pis, I still have my original Raspberry Pi, the very first one that was released.
So have I. I've got double sided tape on mine because I had it in the back of the TV and I was using it as a media center.
That's what I was using this for.
It's still there somewhere.
I've got to. It's got 3 little heat sinks and a fan on mine.
Yeah,
my
I
fan
put
stopped
little heat
working,
sinks on mine as
so
well.
I need to actually replace my fan because it's overheating at the moment. But yeah, that's still the original Pi. But I've got
Well,
Arduinos.
can you do much with those these days?
Yeah, you can actually still. I run a program called Octopi, and it runs my 3D printer.
Oh, okay.
So I've got one of these, and I've got a Raspberry Pi Zero W, which is somewhere. I thought it was there. I'm not sure where it's gone, but it. So I've got one that runs my 3D printer, and I've got one that runs my mini CNC router laser cutter. So you don't
Yeah,
have
for stuff
to.
like that, it'd be really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
That
don't
doesn't
have to
need much
constantly
processing
have the
power.
computer on all the time just to do a 3D print, you know. And you can monitor it from anywhere in the world. You can watch the webcam, you know, they're great. But, you know, that stuff has changed the way that we look at technology, like all the Internet of Things. But it's so true. Like with a Raspberry Pi and an old this and an old that and a couple of these, you can make just about anything do something these days, you know.
That's right, you can.
It's so amazing what you can do.
I actually use the Samsung Smart Things hub.
Yeah, yep.
With the one I have is the Aussie version. You've got to be careful if you're going to buy one of those.
Yeah.
Because the Aussies have a different frequencies to the rest of the world, and the devices that you buy here, according to the standards, are slightly different
You're
to the
talking
frequency.
the 3G, 4G frequencies.
Yeah, I'm talking mainly when it comes to Zigbee and the what's the other one? Something where yeah, the Zigbee and the other one. There's some other protocol that it uses. So it's got Wi-Fi built into it.
Yeah.
It's got the Zigbee built into it. It's got MWare or something like that. Zware, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's got all the three different protocols, so you can run any sort of IoT device on that.
You're talking Z-Wave.
Z-Wave, that's the one I'm looking for.
Yeah, Z-Wave and Zigbee. I mean, they two standards that do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, they do.
Kind of annoys me when they do that. It's like just refine one and make one work properly. Don't worry about having two or three that almost do the same thing. So
they do. That's right. So I bought that particular one, and there's only one mob that sells it apparently at the moment. It's a mob in Melbourne, and believe it or not, it's an insurance company. I can't think of the name now, what it was called now, but it was just some sort of insurance company that sells it down in Melbourne. There's no other supplier that I know of.
There's a company starting up. Well, according to their Facebook page, they're starting up in Brisbane soon, and all they do is Internet of Things devices. They do everything Internet of Things. So everything from your Arduinos, your Pis, your light bulbs, your relay, you know, JCar does some stuff, and, you know, JB Hi-Fi does some stuff, and you can get some stuff on Kogan. You know what I mean? Like, at the moment, to get anything, it's a mishmash of, you know, everything. But yeah, there's this company starting up. I'm trying to find the email I got from them. I can't find it at the moment, but when they're not starting up yet, they're still a couple months away. But once they actually get up and running, it's going to be great to have access to a physical location. They're still selling Chinese stuff, you know, nothing different there. The only difference is they're buying it directly from the manufacturer. So they're getting it bulk pricing directly from the manufacturer. They're offering a warranty, you know, all that stuff. So it's going to be good to be able to go, hey, I need something that'll do this. Say a classic example at the moment on one of the Android Arduino projects I'm working on. I'm trying to find a SIM card compatible device that will work on an Australian network, and it's
you know what?
impossible.
You might want to give you might want to have a look at this place. This is one that I found a while back, and it does just what you said. It's got all these different IoT stuff. It's called the iot-store.com.au.
I think they're in Perth, aren't they?
Right, they're in WA. They're in Western Australia.
That's who I've been using.
And it's got all sorts of stuff, all different bits and pieces, IoT sensors, actuators. They've got CPUs, robotic hardware. They also use the different type of specs of scientific stuff. It's a really good store. If you're into the IoT and you want to get some bits and pieces that are specialized, you have a look here.
And
They've got all sorts of
his
stuff.
prices are pretty good. You know, you might get them a few bucks cheaper online, but they're coming from Australia. I get stuff usually. If I order something Monday, I generally get it Wednesday. If I order it Wednesday, more often than not, I'll get it Friday or I'll get it very first thing Monday. I get a lot of stuff off them. I've actually been using them for quite a while. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's actually these guys who are opening a store in Brisbane. So yeah, but
but I'm just flicking through their website now. They've got a lot of wireless stuff. They've got a lot of cellular stuff on there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, they're good. I got, as I said, like I had a hell of a time finding a dongle, a 3G, 4G dongle that would work in Australia because they just didn't have the frequencies, and these guys actually finally found one after trying a couple others. It cost a bit more instead of costing like, I was getting other ones for like $7, but they just weren't working, and this one was like $30.
Look, it might cost you a few more dollars, but the service that you get, I mean, I've written to them a couple of times, and they get back to you fairly quickly. And it sounds like the people that are there do know their stuff.
Well, that's the other thing too. They actually know what they're selling rather than just having a eBay page full of just random eclectic stuff that they found.
That's exactly right. And you need tips and advice on what to do and what goes with what and what would work with what.
Yep. And I'm always supportive of small Australian businesses. I find, look, I don't actually own one, but I do manage and run one, and knowing just how much issues I have, and I'm not even 100% owning one, as much as possible, if they're a decent business, they look after their customers and try their best, I'll always support them. It's just that simple, So, but yeah. Anyway, I think we're probably just about done. Have you got any other stories?
Look, the only other story I have, and this has just come out in the last few hours, is that the Mobile World Congress has been called off in Barcelona
I saw that.
due to the coronavirus concerns. Apparently, this year the show won't go ahead. The companies like Facebook, Amazon, LG, Intel, Ericsson, Vivo, ZTE, Sony, HMD, and Volvo all dropped out from the event. They thought it was going to be too much of a risk for their staff and for all people concerned within the event. So John Hoffman, who's the CEO of the organization, the GSMA, said that due to regards to the safe and healthy environment in Barcelona and for the host of the country itself, that this year, the 2020 show will be cancelled.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not just that. There's a lot of stuff happening. Like, just quickly before we go, just to give you an example, we obviously, as everyone knows who listens for a while, I work for a battery shop, and let's face it, 80% of batteries manufactured come out of China, or at least by Chinese-run company. A lot of them may come out of Thailand and Philippines and stuff like that, but the companies are actually Chinese-run. And at the moment, basically China is just deserted. There's nobody doing anything. There's nobody taking orders. There's nobody working in factories. Containers aren't getting loaded. Containers aren't getting shipped. Things aren't even getting returned. There's going to be a big shortage on a lot of items that we've forgotten how to make in this country. We ourselves have enough batteries of our biggest selling stuff until the end of the month. And then we're going to be in a lot of trouble with most of our supply lines. There's some that come from America and there's some that come from India, but 90% of the industry is China-based. I don't think people realise the follow-on effect that in the next couple of months, even if they went back to work tomorrow, which they're not going to, it's going to be at least another 6 or 8 weeks. But even if they went back to work tomorrow, there's still going to be a 3-month lag time. By the time everyone gets back up to operating again, people figure out where they left off and things start happening. Containers have been sitting on the docks, may have to come back because their shipping permits have expired. There's all this stuff that's now this big follow-on effect. So for the next at least 3 months, if not potentially 6 months, there's going to be major disruptions to anything coming in and out of effectively every country, but predominantly China anything, and not just China, anything that China owns is going to be affected. So we're going to have massive supply shortages of all sorts of stuff, just
especially
for that
spare
reason.
parts and et cetera, yeah.
And even warranties. Like, there's some stuff we have sent back, but it's sitting on the dock. We can't even send stuff back to China at the moment because there's nobody there to receive it. And so we can't even honour warranties, and we can't even get stock replacement and stuff for warranty stuff because there's nobody handling that sort of stuff anymore. You know, so it's just, it's going to be interesting over the next couple of months. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, so that's pretty much all I have for this evening. So I just wanted to get that point out just to the listeners, just so that they know that if they're going to be buying stuff from China, you might have to wait a little bit before you get it.
Yeah, if they even, a lot of them aren't even selling now. There's a lot of eBay stores and stuff I've noticed that saying, you know, we're not even selling products for the next 8 weeks and, you know, stuff like that. Be wary of the ones that are saying, that are coming from China, that are saying, you know, express freight and stuff like that, because that could mean they're potentially bypassing some of the safeguards that are in place. And also I've noticed a massive drop in Australian sellers that were drop shipping from China, but they're drop shipping, you know, air freight, so it was only taking 3 or 4 days from China. But the number of the fake Australian sellers has really dropped off in the last week as well. They've obviously all run out of stock and they're not selling anymore either. So
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Alrighty, well, we'll call it there. It's been a fun night. Thank you for joining me, Joe, and I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, I did. It was very good. Thanks for that.
So we'll have to try and mix it up a bit more often, and cross-moginate some of the hosts, I think.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No worries. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Jordan was going to be with us tonight, but he got called away at the last minute, so we'll tee that up again for maybe next week, depending on when Jace gets back. But just to let everyone know, if you haven't, you can check out, Glenn put a post up on Facebook like 2 days ago, I think, just to show you what he's dealing with at the moment in terms of his setup and why he's still not coming back yet. However, thanks to everybody who did write in and did message us and did email us and leave comments and all that sort of stuff, saying how much you appreciated what we do. There wasn't a lot of people who did it, but basically everything we got feedback was positive, and we're very happy about that. So it's sort of given us an incentive to carry on. And I think that's about it, and we shall call it a night and do it all again next week.
No worries. See you later.
Thanks, guys. Bye.